Thanks for taking the time to listen to our latest content here on the Blood Red channel. Guy here with just a quick message. Do you want the very latest Liverpool FC news directly into your inbox? Well, then sign up to our daily LFC newsletter, which will bring you the breaking news and big events from around Anfield. To subscribe, just go to bit.ly/LFC newsletter. That's bit.ly/LFC newsletter, or click the link in the description of this podcast and pop in your email address. It really is that simple. That link once more, bit.ly/LFC newsletter. Well, thanks for your time, and on with the podcast.
This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
It's the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo, as we get set to talk through the big talking points out of Anfield this past week. Coming up, there's transfers to talk about with Thiago, Alcantara and Gini Wijnaldum, both in the news during the international break. Rhian Brewster's future has also been up for discussion. We'll get into the importance of that for him this coming season. And football without fans is nothing, but when could they return? And ahead of Liverpool's return to Anfield tomorrow, we'll touch on Saturday's friendly with Blackpool. Here to get into all of that alongside myself, Guy Clarke, Theo Squires, Dan Kay and Matt Addison. Come to you first. Theo, how are you keeping?
Yeah, not too bad. Plugging away nicely. Season now, isn't it? Only just over a week away. Feels very real again. Seems like only yesterday we were commentating on that Chelsea game as Liverpool won the title. And here we go again. Yeah, it's been fast and frenetic towards the end of last season, Dan Kay, but it's been a slow burn towards this season, but we are creeping ever closer now.
We are. I mean, it's strange. We've already kind of got we're into an international break and the season hasn't even started, which is a slightly unusual state of affairs. But I think obviously because of the unusual circumstances of this year, I think this is going to be a season like no other on the back of another season that was like no other. So, yeah, bring it all on.
Yeah, Matt Addison also ready for the truncated season. We know, Matt, once the football is here, it's going to be thick and fast, isn't it?
It is. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a game at least every 3 or 4 days, isn't it? So it's going to be a frenetic time. But I think the main thing for me is we can stop talking about transfers and get back to actual football. Yeah, transfers have taken on much more significance, I suppose, during this international break than as they always do. Theo, it's normally quite a quiet time, the international break, but the transfer speculation and transfer gossip columns this week have been hotting up with Gini Wijnaldum and Thiago Alcantara's names mentioned. How much further down the road are we with those, or are we not?
You cut off there. I didn't hear what you said. Sorry, mate.
That's absolutely fine. I said this week we've obviously seen a lot with the gossip columns with Thiago and Gini Wijnaldum. How much further down the road are we with those, or is it all just paper talk?
We're a little bit further along in the fact that both players have been asked about their futures and both players have commented on their futures. But as you'd expect, they're not giving much away. Gone are the days of, say, Luis Suarez going on international duty and saying whatever he wanted because he was desperate for a move. Players seem to be a bit more mature these days, don't they? They don't give too much away unless they're properly angling for a move. Thiago, I think he was asked about his future. Gini Wijnaldum, he was asked about his future, and both of them said it's just rumours. They've got really nothing they want to talk about at the moment. They don't want to comment. They're focused on the international games they're playing, and then it's just as you were. Our understanding is still Thiago is not an active target. Gini Wijnaldum, contract talks have not been held, and it'll be, well, one has to go for the other one to happen, so to speak, whether that's Wijnaldum gets a new contract, so then there's no chance of Thiago, or Wijnaldum leaves and Thiago, their move happens. We think it's one it can go down to the wire, can't it, really? What with the transfer window having another month left, just see what happens. Liverpool, understandably, would love to have a player like Thiago in the ranks. Jurgen Klopp is a big fan, but you'd love to have Gini Wijnaldum in your ranks. Jurgen Klopp is a big fan. It's one to just keep an eye on, and until one of them blinks and makes first move, it's going to, as you were, for the foreseeable.
Matt, another month, the window to take. Can you take it, all of this gossiping and speculation that goes around?
I think I'm going to have to, aren't I? So not too much choice there. I suppose the benefit today, as I've been manning our live blogs, there's been a sort of new line, if you like, come out of Spain, the fact that Thiago might be of interest to Barcelona. So it was at least a sort of new spin on what is a transfer rumour that has gone on for a little while now. So yeah, it looks like, it's going to rumble on. I don't think there's any sort of swift conclusion. I think, obviously, Liverpool are waiting as long as possible for their transfer dealings because of the uncertainty financially and that sort of thing. So it's just a completely different situation, isn't it, this summer? We know we've gone over the reasons why that is. And as much as that is the case, that will mean that fans get a little bit more frustrated the longer it goes on, the longer that talk continues. And, Wijnaldum and Thiago is still in the air. People are just going to get a little bit frustrated. But look, that's just the way it is. Hopefully, the fact that, as we say, football is coming back, maybe that will give people something else to talk about, a little bit of a distraction, if you like, from the transfer. Because I can certainly see the rumours, at the very least, going on for at least another few weeks yet.
Yeah, we've got a lot of football discussion to have coming up today on the podcast. But Dan, in terms of Thiago and Gini Wijnaldum, for you, is it as simple as Gini out, Thiago in? Because we saw midway through this week, it did seem to all really hot up around Gini Wijnaldum and those Barcelona links.
Yeah, it does seem like the fortunes of these two players are inextricably linked to each other, and it just feels like a bit of a poker game, doesn't it? Ronald Koeman seems to have made it very clear from the noises coming out of Barcelona that he would like to take him to the Camp Nou, and why wouldn't he? Obviously knows him well from their time together with the Dutch national squad. You could understand if Gini, having had 4 or 5 very successful years at Anfield, possibly looking for one last challenge if he was interested. Obviously, we saw Thiago came out this morning and said Bayern Munich is his home, so he's obviously keeping his cards close to his chest. I'd agree with what Theo says. It's a very unusual transfer window, and I think it's one of these where it is a bit of a slow burner. I think as the season gets going, and particularly they changed it in the last couple of seasons where the window shut when the season started. But in the past, when the window has been open for maybe 2 or 3 weeks after the season's got underway, you've seen a couple of teams, if they've had a couple of bad results, panic sets in. And I think you may well see a flurry of activity towards the end, which isn't particularly helpful, I don't think, for the players or the managers or the coaches or their teammates. But this is just the reality of it. And I think, until something definitive happens, we're going to have this kind of tennis match of back and forth with rumour and counter rumour, which I'm kind of in the Matt. I'm in the Matt Add school, really, to be honest. I'd rather be talking about the football, but transfer business is a part of the modern game. A lot of fans absolutely love it. Some fans seem to love it actually more than trophies and football itself. But that's their business, and we've got to try and provide a little bit of something for everybody. And obviously, we'll keep on top of things as much as we can with this and see how everything develops.
Yeah, just come back to you, Matt, on the Thiago talk of him saying that Bayern's his home. Very different line from which you heard from Christian Falk talking to him on the Blood Red channel earlier this week, when he said that effectively after winning the treble this year with Bayern Munich, Thiago had basically already said his goodbyes to everyone there.
Yeah, that is what we've heard, isn't it, from German media for a number of weeks now, that Thiago said his goodbyes. He's absolutely made peace with the fact that he's going to leave. And to be honest, I think that is almost where these rumours are coming from. I think possibly it is the case that he has decided to move on, and therefore Bayern, knowing that he will be a free agent next summer, are trying to generate as much interest in him as possible. They're trying to hype the player up as much as possible to try and get that 30 million euros. But as long as the price is 30 million euros, which is seemingly what every report seems to be suggesting, there's just no way that Liverpool will pay that sort of money for somebody who, as I say, they can get in just a few months' time. So it's a situation, I think, really where Bayern have to decide, how desperate are they to get rid of the player this summer? How desperate is the player to move away? And potentially there could be some movement, I think, if that price tag gets moved down. But look, I think we know for a fact that all of this speculation seems to be coming from the Bayern end. All we can say at this stage is that all Liverpool will say is it's not an active target at this stage. So we know that could change, but that hasn't changed yet, and it's been a good few weeks now.
Yeah, it certainly has been the case. So if that one's not moving anywhere, let's talk about another Liverpool player who has also been linked with a departure this summer, albeit on a temporary basis after a successful loan spell at Swansea City. There's been talk around Rhian Brewster maybe upgrading on that loan and moving to a Premier League side. Theo, you've written a piece on the Echo today talking about where Brewster stands right now, and maybe it won't be going out on loan.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Rhian Brewster because there were reports earlier this week saying Jurgen Klopp had made his decision that he was going to keep him at Liverpool until at least the January window. We've seen reports for a while now that Liverpool were going to delay making a decision on his future until the international break, and here we are. I think there were some quotes as well from Steve Cooper, the Swansea manager. Swansea obviously would love to have Brewster back, but he seemed a bit more resigned to the fact that it wouldn't happen, that Liverpool would potentially be keeping Brewster for at least the first half of the season, or a Premier League club might come in and sign him on loan. And it's just an interesting one when you look at his situation, because he's essentially in the exact same position he was in last summer, apart from he's actually gone out to Swansea and proven what he can do. When you think Liverpool could have made, 6 substitutions in the Community Shield, Brewster was the 4th man off the bench, came on in the last minute. So that means he's still down the pecking order. He's not Jurgen Klopp's go-to man off the bench anytime soon, despite his goals in pre-season. And this Liverpool team in the Community Shield was one without Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, without Jordan Henderson, without Divock Origi, without Xherdan Shaqiri. So when the competition is still rife there, he's going to find it hard to get opportunities. And it's one where you assess his situation. Is it one where you keep him with the squad as an option and see if you can learn the Liverpool way and sort of bed him in slowly? Or do you let him go on loan and play football? It's horses for courses. Curtis Jones, he had a loan move decision that was taken out of his hands. Liverpool decided not to loan him out in January, and he thrived from it. He was brilliant for Liverpool during the second half of last season when he was getting his opportunities. But for me, Rhian Brewster doesn't seem like he'd do well sitting on the bench and not playing. Last season, he didn't actually get that many opportunities even on the bench as part of the matchday squad. He was always this additional man. So that meant he couldn't even play for the under-23s because the matches coincided. And he just can't afford another season like that. He needs to play football. He needs to score goals. He needs to keep up this momentum and keep performing. He could be a huge player for Liverpool, I believe, in 2021-22 when you've got the Africa Cup of Nations where 2 of the front 3 are going to go, when you've got the whole front 3 reaching their 30th birthday. So it is a long-term play for Liverpool with Rhian Brewster. And he'll be part of the future. But it's like, are you really ready to throw him into your mix now? Can you give him the opportunities he needs now? And I don't think they can. But he could jump ahead of Divock Origi in the pecking order and be the go-to striker off the bench. Just was Jurgen Klopp, how much game time he promised him? He promised him game time last season, and it didn't happen. I'd rather see him go out on loan now than have 6 months of the same, where he's just twiddling his thumbs, getting a little bit here and there, and not really pushing on as much as he was on loan to, say, a Newcastle or an Aston Villa or whoever else has been linked with him.
Yeah, I suppose that's the crux of the issue, really, isn't it, Dan? Of how much football is Rhian Brewster actually going to be given? Because he's not just a young player now having come through the youth academy system. Now he's proven he can score goals in the professional game. And as Theo said, we know last season Swansea wanted to take him from the start of the season. Jurgen Klopp thought he could play him, thought that there would be a role for him as a player. That didn't quite materialise. So in January, agreed for all parties that it was best to go to Swansea City. But if he does stick around this season, surely he has to be given game time, and even game time from the start.
Absolutely, yeah. That surely has to be part of the thinking and the considerations when the powers that be are kind of deciding how they're going to resolve his situation for this season. I think it's fair to call the minimum of 5 forward players. Obviously, you've got the main front 3, and at the moment it seems like Brewster and Origi are the other 2 options. Liverpool have been very fortunate in many ways that, by and large, for 2 or 3 seasons now, that Mane, Salah, and Firmino have been in tandem with each other. None of them have really picked up any kind of sustained, lengthy injury that's kept them out for any significant period of time. Obviously, we hope that remains the case. There are the 3 flying front as there are in the world, but you can't guarantee it. And by the law of averages, you'd have to think one of them is going to pick up a knock. I think the idea of succession planning is going to start to come into things as well. Whether that means that Klopp does start to even mix things up and use the likes of Brewster or Origi from the start, even when one of the main front 3 isn't injured. The reality is they are all now in the 29 bracket. They're not going to be playing for Liverpool for the next 5 years together. So, Klopp has made it very, very clear from the start how much he rates Brewster. I think it's clear that his loan spell at Swansea in the first half of this year will be successful, 11 goals in 22 games. I think we've seen signs in pre-season that the that experience has served him well, and he seems to have matured from that. So, I mean, I can see both sides of the coin. What would nightmare is if Liverpool did send us on loan, and God forbid, Firmino, Salah, whoever breaks the leg, and the week after the window shuts, and then Liverpool is stuck. So, I think if it had been a normal window, I think probably Liverpool might have looked at them on because the market would be more fluid. But because everything is that little bit more tight and cagey and a bit of a poker game at the moment, I think at the minute, Klopp will keep his cards close to his chest and at the moment keep Brewster close to him at Anfield. We've still got, it's October the 5th, is it? 4th or 5th? So exactly a month. And you'd imagine here that Liverpool are in a strong position here. They could probably wait till the day before, and if they wanted to get a loan move for Bruce, they probably could. But I think at the moment, Klopp has to make sure that he's got the main bases for Liverpool covered. And from my point of view, that means having Brewster around because of his pace, his hunger, his kind of his youthful exuberance. I think he would just give us a little bit something different from the other four. So for me, I would like to see him stay. I'd like to see him get a bit more of a crack of the whip than what he has done so far.
I suppose that is a key point as well that Dan raises there, Matt, that if there is this idea of succession planning, then you can't go from not having Rhian Brewster involved hardly at all to all of a sudden playing a line share of games. As I said, maybe after one comes, there does have to be that period where he does break into the team. And we know Pep Lijnders spoke when he took that press conference ahead of the MK Dons game. He called him the complete striker, said he can do everything. Before he was up to Swansea and Klopp said he's stuff to learn, but we are really excited about Rhian Brewster. So maybe this year he could get a go, could he?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd agree more with Dan. I think in terms of keeping him about, obviously it's not just the succession plan, it's the fact that Liverpool have got so many games this season. If ever there was a season to give him a chance, I think it would probably be this one. I think obviously Jurgen Klopp has made those comments about how good he is, but he's also made comments in the last couple of weeks to say that he's still certain things that he needs to learn, that he needs to sort of mould himself into being more of a Liverpool striker rather than just an exceptional number 9 that we know that he can be. So I think the only way that you mould yourself into being more of a Liverpool player is by playing for Liverpool. I don't think you necessarily learn that from, say, going to a Newcastle or a Crystal Palace or an Aston Villa or whoever else is interested in him. So for me, it makes most sense to keep him around. And as I say, there's going to be a game every 3 or 4 days. For me, he should be given a fair few opportunities. I think there's a good chance this season that if he hasn't already, he could well overtake Divock Origi in terms of, being first option off the bench. He can have potentially a bigger impact than what we've seen with Origi for the last 12 months or so. And then you've got to think about as well, are Liverpool going to maybe have some sort of tactical development where they move into a more of a 4-2-3-1 system? And I've spoken about that in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, Takumi Minamino and players like that impressing. You think, maybe Brewster needs that sort of formation to work, to have that number 9 with the 3 behind him, and it's changed Liverpool. But I think that is a possibility that we'd see that going forward. So there's a few different reasons, I think, but for me, he's absolutely got to stay at Liverpool next season.
What counts against him is he doesn't have the versatility of the other 4 players he's against. Seen in the past where, say, Firmino gets substituted off, Klopp will throw on Minamino as that central striker. It depends what option you want. Sometimes it's Origi. There is just that competition there, Brewster. So you can guarantee those games, and I think you're guaranteeing in games. You're basically saying Divock Origi is done at Liverpool, and then it's, well, what role do you fit in for Minamino? Because it's sort of, what do you want to do? Do you want to do what's best for Liverpool, or do you want to do what's best for Brewster? If you do what's best for Liverpool, you are keeping Brewster for the season. But then that's a very short-term mentality, because that won't be what's best for the player in the long term for him to really push on, because he does seem to be a player that he needs like a strike. That's how come he's in such a much better position now than he was 6 months ago, having not had that senior game time. And it is just, I think Jurgen Klopp's going to have to make that decision and see what he does with it in the next month, before the window closes, to decide whether he can give him these opportunities. I imagine he would have wanted to give him a few more games than he did during the first half of last season, but the games were so tight. Even when they were coming fast, Liverpool had a very busy fixture list last year with all these different competitions. And with the games being so tight, being won by the odd goal here or there, he didn't really feel he could turn to Rhian Brewster. And it's, well, do you now have that maturity in it? Say Liverpool are in it and they need a goal. Is the man you send on to win you a game? Because he didn't really at the weekend. He went for Naby Keita first. He went for Minamino first. He's going to have to do a lot of stepping up if he is going to become that go-to man. And he does for the first half of the season at the very least.
Yeah, it is a big jump, I suppose, from Swansea City chasing the top six in the Championship up to Liverpool at the top of the Premier League. But Dan, I just wonder if Rhian Brewster going forward will be at the height of a tactical switch for Jurgen Klopp. We saw partly in the Community Shield the 4-2-3-1. Don't really think since Klopp was at Dortmund with Lewandowski, he's had that out-and-out number 9. Of course, he first came to Liverpool. Rigi played that role. Daniel Sturridge played that role, injuries permitting. But it does feel as though Rhian Brewster is that number 9. He can be that player. Salah's obviously gone through the middle, but it never seems quite natural in number 9 position. And maybe the tactics are to change. Rhian Brewster could be at the heart of the thinking.
It's possible. I mean, that this is going to be one of the real challenges, I think, of what will most likely be the second half of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool tenure. Roberto Firmino has obviously played such a pivotal role at the heart of the Liverpool attack, but he's a unique player. You know what I mean? And I think we've touched on this before, that I think it would be an exercise in futility to try and just find someone to replace him entirely, because I've not seen, in all the years I've been watching football, I've not seen a player like him, and I don't think a like for like alternative exists. So this is where you need tactical variation, ingenuity, and and a bit of innovation. Everything you hear about Brewster is that he's a big kid. He wants to learn. He wants to take stuff on. We've seen that development in him, particularly obviously since he's gone to Swansea and come back. Theo made the point that he was only a very late option off the bench. Obviously, it was very hard work for him on Saturday. He was literally brought on to take the penalty for the penalty shootouts. And unfortunately, he was the only one that missed. And Liverpool did. Arsenal won the Charity Shield on the back of that. I think for a young lad, he seems to have been through a bit in his career already. Obviously the well documented racial abuse he suffered quite early on during some Europa Youth League matches. He's had to kind of deal with being a kid from London up in Liverpool, away from his family, and I think he's had to show strength of character to deal with what he's had so far. This now is the real kind of pivotal stage of his career, I think. And it'll be fascinating to see if he can adapt himself and ultimately take the chances that are put in front of him, because that is the cold, hard currency of strikers, isn't it? Goals. We can talk till the cows come home. I'm slightly conscious myself because maybe Firmino is the slight exception to the rule there. But for most strikers, the absolute currency is goals. And I think particularly for a young lad like him who clearly loves being at Liverpool. I was watching, there's a great video going around today of the Barcelona second leg semi, which I think some of us will probably be watching on some kind of loop until the day we die. He was only on the bench that day, but he was right in the mix of all the celebrations, even though he's not actually been on the pitch or directly involved in it. He has been a part of this incredible era for Liverpool over the last 18 to 24 months. And the challenge is there for him now. Can he pick the baton up, take the opportunities that may well be there in front of him, adapt a game as and where he needs to fit into what wants, situations demand. I really hope he's able to do it, because he seems like a genuine kid. The equalising goal he got against Salzburg, that to me was the sign of a true goal scorer. Was it Minamino or someone had run through and the goalkeeper kind of blocked him, and the spinning ball, Curtis Jones, thanks Theo. Ball looped out to him, and just the way he adjusted his body instantly and popped it back over the goalkeeper said to me that he's not just a finisher, he's a footballer. So this is the next stage for him, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it develops.
Yeah, certainly will be one to keep an eye on. Well, before we talk about this coming season, we best round off something that relates to last season. Today, the six-man shortlist for the PFA Player of the Year was announced, and no fewer than 4 Liverpool players on that list. Van Dijk, Sadio Mane, Jordan Henderson and Trent Alexander-Arnold face competition from Kevin De Bruyne and Raheem Sterling. We'll quickly go round on this one, guys. Who's the who's the award going to? Surely it's going to be one of the Reds, isn't it, Theo?
I reckon it's going to go to Kevin De Bruyne. I know it's not the popular choice amongst Liverpool fans, but it seems when you think back to last season, it's very much post-Project Restart when you remember how well players were playing. And so it depends when those went in, really. But De Bruyne was the standout player across the season. We've seen 2 of the awards given so far to the Premier League Player of the Season and the Football Writers one. The Football Writers one went to Henderson. The Premier League went to Kevin De Bruyne. So I'd imagine De Bruyne is the favourite. For Liverpool, it's an interesting one when you think who could be their favourite. Jordan Henderson was the standout performer, and his absence showed how important he was to the team. But I think the longer time's gone on, it sort of lost that glamour, so to speak. You often overlook how good Sadio Mane was when he was getting so many winners, so many vital goals. Virgil van Dijk, he's probably not going to win it just because he won it last year, and now you expect that consistency from him. And then Trent, I reckon he'll win it one year, but it won't be this year. He's up for the Young Player of the Year of award, so that can be his one, can't it? Liverpool haven't won the Young Player one since Steven Gerrard in 2001. If you can follow in his footsteps in more ways than one there, that would be a great sign for Liverpool and for Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Yeah, Matt, who's it going to for you? Ethan, joining us on the live YouTube video, says that he thinks it must be Trent. What about yourself?
No, I think Trent definitely for the young player. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think obviously Jordan Henderson is the best story of last season, but for me, Kevin De Bruyne is the best footballer in the Premier League, and I think you've got to base it on that. But for me, him, I suppose obviously the fact that there are 4 Liverpool players on the shortlist is a good thing for me. I think there probably should have been another one in Mohamed Salah. I think he will be slightly annoyed that he wasn't on there. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang as well. I think won the Golden Boot, didn't he? He's slightly unfortunate to miss out, but I suppose it just goes to show that the quality of players that there are in the Premier League. But yeah, I think it's a year or two too soon for Trent Alexander-Arnold to win the main one, but undoubtedly he will win that at some point in his career, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think Jamie Vardy won the Golden Boot. Aubameyang, I think, 1 goal behind. So let's hope Jamie Vardy's not listening into the Blood Red podcast. But Dan, the other 2, Kevin De Bruyne, I have to say, a team that wins the league title by 18 points and has, for me, I would say it's got to be a split between maybe either Jordan Henderson or Sadio Mane, who had an absolutely unbelievable season last time out.
Well, I wouldn't argue with that. I mean, obviously, we have to remember that I think I'm right in saying Salah and Van Dijk have won it the last 2 seasons when City won the league, didn't they? So it's not necessarily a given that the team that wins the title does get that award. But De Bruyne is an outstanding footballer, one of the best of his generation, without doubt. He's absolutely graced the Premier League, and I very much enjoy watching him play, apart from when he's playing against Liverpool or he's doing damage to our hopes of silverware. I'd love to see Trent win both. I don't know if that's ever happened or ever will happen or ever even could.
Cristiano, I believe, has done it both.
Has he? Ronaldo?
I believe so. Might need to check it. I imagine
it doesn't sound beyond the realms of possibility, does it? Jordan Henderson is one of the season's great stories, but I would like to see if it was up to me, I would like to see Mane again, because he is almost kind of like a little forgotten about sometimes with the big names of Salah and Van Dijk and the other star players, but he is the real driving force, I think, a lot of the time in this Liverpool team. One of my favourites of the season, the Adam Lallana's late equaliser at Old Trafford, and there's a couple of great video clips and pictures of Mane. While it was at the Liverpool end, the scoreboard end of Old Trafford, and Mane's the one dragging the players back, going, "Come on, we can still win this," even though they didn't. That kind of mentality, I think, has become very, very evident with him, and it's infectious. You know what I mean? And Mane's been at the club long, and I think that the way he is, I think, is in players and training. Others have seen his example and ran with it. So if it was up to me, I'd like to see Sadio get it, because Jordan's already had a couple this season, hasn't he?
Yeah, he certainly has. I think, as Theo said, Cristiano Ronaldo has won both awards, as has Gareth Bale, and I believe former Everton striker Andy Gray did during his time with Aston Villa. So, well, moving on, let's get on to the coming season then. And Dan, come back to you on this one, and it's a real important point, and it's being that we may well just know or have an inkling into when fans may return to Anfield, and it could be the third home game of the season, the 24th of October, when Liverpool welcome Sheffield United to Anfield.
Yeah, that's right. The club announced yesterday, long awaited really, because, quite a lot of clubs in the Premier League have already certainly been selling season tickets and kind of given their supporters an indication of what they're doing. It's obviously, not having a go at them, because obviously it's a hugely unusual circumstance that we all find ourselves in. But yeah, it seems that there have been meetings going on and plans putting into place for hopefully the Sheffield United game at the end of October, which will be the third home match. We believe that all four stands of the ground would be open, and there would be around about 12,500 supporters inside. The other interesting matter is that the club have suspended season tickets sales for the coming season, which I think in many ways makes a lot of sense. The rationale behind it is they don't want to basically have people shelling out £600-800 for matches that they may only be able to see a small proportion of. And it'll be done on a match-by-match basis. There'll be no auto cup scheme. I already know some of my pals are already starting to wonder. Well, I think the club have said loyalty for there will be no loyalty for matches this season. Now, I can't imagine it wouldn't be the case, but I would hope the club will confirm at some point that the loyalty that some supporters have built up for years and years, and in Europe, in away matches, in home matches, that will be rolled over when we hope things get back to something resembling normal, maybe start of next season. I do not envy one little bit whoever's got to decide who goes to what match. The capacity of Anfield is about 55,000. We believe there's about 30,000 season ticket holders. So it's going to be less than half the season ticket holders get to go. There was an intriguing suggestion in St Helens, Ian Doyle, St Helens Finest's piece overnight.
I think we seem to have lost Dan there for the time being. I don't know if
he on 10 hooks there. I wanted to know what he was going to say.
I was going to say he was talking about Ian Doyle and he got cut off. Is there any surprise? Dan's back with us. Dan, you're on mute for the time being. You'll have to unmute yourself. You were talking about Ian Doyle and got cut off. I don't think there's any coincidence there.
No, there was maybe something in the ether there. I didn't want me to say what I was going to say, but it's an awful. It's a horrendous decision. It's one of these kind of situations where people are going to be unhappy either way. It's an awful decision. How do you choose who gets to go? Bearing in mind the situation that we're in there, and this is something that I know some people have already been discussing before. Doyle basically made the point that, in fact, I'll read out the actual quote from his piece because I tweeted it myself this morning. While Liverpool have not yet decided how best to determine who has access to tickets, government advice on unnecessary long-distance travel would appear to suggest local supporters should be given priority. Now, this is a very emotive issue. I know plenty of local-born Liverpool supporters that wouldn't get out of bed to go and see them. Whereas I know plenty of people who are from out of town or even abroad whose loyalty and dedication to the cause is beyond reproach. So, but it's an invidious choice that people have to make, because a ticket for Sheffield United at home. Well, maybe Sheffield United at home is a bad example because obviously it'd be the first game back. But most people, I think it's fair to say, would rather go to watch Everton, Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea than Southampton, Watford, West Ham, whoever. That being said, I think, bearing in mind, by the time people get in the ground in October, it'll be over 6 months since the Atletico Madrid. I think most people, if they're sensible, will just be glad to be able to get into any game at all. And I think the most important thing is for the team, they'll have some support there. As we may get on to, I think Liverpool are one of the teams who will suffer from the lack of house more than most. So the sooner we get them back in, the better.
You're looking forward to that Watford game, Dan?
Particularly if they've been relegated, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't get anything past you, can I?
No, I was going to let that one slide, but I thought Theo may just jump in there. But Matt, then talk of the 12,500 then maybe being allowed back inside Anfield. Of course, it depends where we are by this time. And once the club actually confirm that this is perhaps what is going to be going ahead, it works out just short of a quarter of the capacity of Anfield. And I suppose, as Dan alluded to there, Anfield won't quite be the same without it being packed to the rafters and everybody creating, obviously, that historic atmosphere that Anfield is renowned for. But I think probably fair to say that Liverpool have missed supporters in grounds, be it home or away, that atmosphere is something that Jurgen Klopp's side thrive off.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think obviously Liverpool's atmosphere and that sort of thing, the whole sort of mythology around it, if you like, is kind of steeped in Liverpool history. So I think it's obviously important. It's something that the players, it gives them that extra bit of edge. And I think we noticed, especially not just because it's Liverpool, because Liverpool had won the title so early. Obviously, they didn't have quite as much to play for. If you drop off by a couple of percentage points, that looks a lot in the Premier League. But then you add in the fact that there's no fans there as well. And I think that just exaggerates the effect. So I think it might not be necessarily as bad, given that Liverpool will then have to go back to winning every match and everything will start to mean 100% again, rather than just getting to the end of the season and getting that title over the line. But yeah, obviously it goes without saying that fans are hugely important. I think even if it is only 12,000, I think that will make a little bit of a difference. Just the fact there is some people in there rather than nobody, I think it just makes it that little bit more familiar. And obviously, it's not an ideal scenario. We know that we would much rather have Anfield 100% full, the full 54,000 or in the stadium. But it's one of the things that is, at the moment, it looks like the best case scenario in October would be that there's a quarter capacity. If that is the case, all you can say really is that's better than nothing.
I suppose one thing that's hard to quantify as well, Theo, but Jurgen Klopp has spoken about it a number of times, the power of Anfield, and even thinking of games such as Leicester City at home last season, the amount of times Liverpool won by goals last season and goals that came late on in games. It's easy to be corny and say, oh, it's the 12th man, but Anfield does seem to have a tangible effect on Liverpool. That is without doubt.
Yeah, that's why we have famous Anfield Europeans. It's when you've got so many famous nights throughout this club's history have come at Anfield when you expect them not to be able to pull it off. They do get this extra 10%, whatever you want to call it, out of the players. And whilst it's going to be a negative, these games where they haven't had the fans or where it's only a fraction of the percentage full, can you imagine how loud it's going to be when you finally allowed all the fans back in, when they can finally all together sing and welcome the Premier League champions, watch them run out together. Liverpool might not be at the very best during the first weeks of the season when they're still struggling a bit. Maybe if you want to say it is due to the fact they don't have this support, but you'd back them to finish strongly, wouldn't you? And got everyone behind them, because they're going to have missed it so much this past 6 months, year, however long they're waiting. And these fans have been waiting the exact same time to finally give the Premier League champions the reception they deserve. Liverpool have got such a connection with the fan base, and it is such a famous and vital part of their narrative going years back, right the way through to Shankly. And that is why it's a special club to support. That's why all these fans are desperate to come and watch this team play. And like Daz, you don't envy, you've got to make this decision. But I think whoever does go for as part of these 12,000 fans, 13,000 fans for every games, they'll be just to be delighted to be back at Anfield, won't they? They'll make the noise of 55,000 fans because they know how important that role is going to be. And when Liverpool have got fans behind them, you never write them off as some of the biggest sides on the planet have found out of their perils in recent years.
Yeah, it is. It can't come soon enough. I don't think the day that football fans can be back in stadium, and of course Liverpool fans back at Anfield, and that date, the 24th of October, perhaps the date that Liverpool fans will get back inside Anfield for maybe that game at home with Sheffield United in the Premier League. Well, to round things off then this afternoon on the Blood Red podcast, we're going to chat about Saturday's friendly at Anfield. The Reds are going to be back against Blackpool for a pre-season friendly. And Matt, I'll come with this one first up. We've obviously seen the training pictures, and within those, Captain Jordan Henderson back in training. What a pleasant sight that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic sight for him and for Liverpool as well. And not just him, Joel Matip as well, which I think is obviously hugely important. We've discussed enough times the lack of centre-backs that Liverpool have at the moment. So it's sort of timely return for both of those players. And I think obviously the game tomorrow against Blackpool is going to be massively important to get the minutes in their legs ahead of the new season, because, you know, we keep saying it, there's going to be so many matches. Every single player in the squad is going to be needed, and they're going to have to be ready right from the get-go. So it'd be interesting to see how long each of those players do get tomorrow at Anfield. You'd imagine at least 45 minutes each, if not slightly more. But obviously, with just over a week to go until that first game of the season, to have a player as important as Jordan Henderson, I think we've seen when he's not been there, Liverpool haven't quite been at it in the midfield. They've not quite moved the ball as quickly and that sort of thing. So it's hugely important to get him back.
And also, of course, Dan, leading Blackpool for the game will be the former Reds under-23 manager come part-time FA Cup manager, Neil Critchley. And I suppose more than any time, it's sort of one of those where the occasional Mister fans, because I'm sure a number of Liverpool fans would have wanted to thank Neil Critchley for what he did and obviously how he guided the side, certainly in the FA Cup last season.
Well, absolutely. And I think, he has a lot to take credit for, obviously the likes of Rhian Brewster, who we've been talking about today. I think I'm probably right in saying he would have worked with Trent Alexander-Arnold as well in his time during the club. And it was very clear how much respect and admiration Jurgen Klopp has had for him and what kind of safe hand he felt he was placing the team in. Obviously, for those games they took charge last season, away to Villa, wasn't it? And the Shrewsbury replay in the FA Cup. It's a shame that, it kind of became a thing round about the turn of the century. I seem to remember one very rainy Sunday against Parma, I think at the start of the treble year. I think Gerard Houllier really was the one that kind of brought back pre-season Anfield friendlies. And it was a nice kind of way to kind of get your feet wet, very wet that day, after the long summer break. So it's a shame really that people won't be able to be there tomorrow to kind of, to say thanks to Critch and obviously to see the lads in action. But it'll be a useful run out, I think, for both sides. The fact that obviously Liverpool have a number of players away on international duty means that perhaps some of a couple of the young players, maybe certainly in the second half, who Critchley's worked with, will get the chance to have a run out themselves, and it's an exercise just to keep them ticking over. I think really, isn't it? The main business against newly promoted Leeds a week tomorrow. Yeah,
and it's a rare, I suppose, sort of a rare option that Jurgen Klopp's got this, Theo, that he's actually got all of his front three at Liverpool to have a pre-season friendly at Anfield, obviously a week before that game with Leeds United. Yes, there's a number of European players away on international duty, but it is going to be still a very strong Liverpool side that play Liverpool.
Yeah, we'll have a piece, I think, going out in the morning on players that are available and who's got the chance to make that impact. And you think for the front three, they haven't really been firing at their best in pre-season. I think you can probably accuse most Liverpool players of that, with it being such a short schedule, with them only playing a couple of games. So it's just another game for them to find their groove, hopefully get a couple of goals each before the start of the new season. And then I think Divock Origi was pictured. He's back in training as well. I think I saw David Lynch tweet Shaqiri's back too, though he wasn't pictured. So Liverpool have got all these players. It's not just the senior front three that you think, it'd be nice to see them get a few goals. It's the ones who haven't had the game time in pre-season or haven't had much football at all in the reserve roles. You want to see them stake a claim. I think Takumi Minamino, Naby Keita, they'll have been aggrieved to have only been substitutes against Arsenal in the Community Shield. They've been two of the better performers in pre-season. It's another chance for them to state their claim and say why they should be starting against Leeds. And then it's for the kids, isn't it? Like we've seen Dejan Lovren leave Liverpool this summer. It doesn't look like Liverpool sign a fourth choice centre-back as it stands. We've heard the reports that Nat Phillips could be leaving. Well, it's a big chance for Billy Kmetio to prove that he could be that fourth choice centre-back. And if not him, well, Sepp Vandenberg's still there. The most interesting one for me is the fullbacks. All four senior fullbacks are away on international duty. So you'd imagine that means James Milner's going to be left back unless Klopp wants to give Larouci a game for some reason, even though he's going to leave, or if he's got another kid he wants to play with Adam Lewis also out on loan. It might just be James Milner goes left back. But it's a chance to see Keanu Hoover at right back. He's one of the younger players who's sort of been forgotten, I think, because of Nico Williams' rise through the ranks. And it would just be another chance for Klopp to have a look at, say, Hoover, Harvey Elliott, if he wants to give him a game. Another chance for Curtis Jones as well. All these players will get game time, and it will be a chance for them to have a chance to show Klopp what they can do a week before the real football starts.
Yeah, and can't wait for the real action to get. I do keep across the Echo, of course, tomorrow afternoon before-match coverage on Saturday of that pre-season friendly with Blackpool. But from us here on the Blood Red podcast, that is it for this edition of the podcast. Do continue to support us. It's much appreciated if you like, rate, review, subscribe, wherever it is you do consume your Blood Red content, whether it be on the YouTube channel or whether it be wherever you get your audio on demand. Also, check out the Twice Daily newsletter in the description for the podcast. You can get Liverpool news right to your email without even having to move anywhere at all. But from myself, Guy Clarke, Theo Squires, Dan Kay and Matt Addison, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.